the one in which Dean is not a murderer and is dead according to the cops. Welcome back to Supernatural First Watch Podcast, a rewatch podcast designed to be spoiler-free and enjoyed as if it's your first watch. I'm your host, Kimberly, a self-proclaimed sci-fi and fantasy nerd who loves diving into the details of really great TV shows. Previously on Supernatural, we have the same intro, and we know that Dad went on a hunting trip, something's wonky, and we just left Toledo, Ohio, where Bloody Mary was wreaking havoc. This week, we are diving into Skin. And unlike our normal opener, this opener shows somebody being tortured, and the lights come in as the cops are trying to hunt somebody down, and we see Dean's face. Of course, this is TV, so of course most of us believe that what we see is not what we believe, and we cut to a few days earlier where Sam is reading on his BlackBerry and has gotten an email from Becky, a friend from Stanford, whose brother has been arrested for the murder of his girlfriend. Sam wants to help them out, but Dean's like, is it really our kind of case? Sam is adamant, so he indulges him and they head on over to St. Louis. They say that they're actually on the way to somewhere, but they're going to go back. But if they're on the way to Arizona, going back to St. Louis, I'm really a little bit confused about the geography of that. When they get to the house, Becky tells them that Zach came home to find his girlfriend was beaten to death. However, Becky knows that Zach was with her when Emily's time of death was, but a security tape shows him arriving home at that time, so something is wonky in the city of St. Louis. Sam claims that Dean is a police detective to get Becky to accept their help. They go to the house, and the only clues they're able to find is that the house was robbed about a week before, and the dog next door is very angry even though he used to be a sweetheart. Dean's really not sold on this being their kind of case, but Sam grabs the security tape when Becky gives it to them, and what do you know, Zach's eyes flare when he looks at the camera. Somewhere else in town, we see Zach, of course not Zach, watching a man leave his apartment, and of course later that night we come back and find out that she has also been beaten. She begs him not to hurt her anymore, but instead of finishing untying her, he hears a noise and goes after it. And instead of trying to fight back against his attacker, he simply stands there waiting to get hit. The next morning, Sam and Dean return to Zach's house because they're trying to find out how the imposter got in and how he must have avoided the cops and the video camera to be not caught again. They follow the blood smear and to an alley and, of course, see something intriguing, but an ambulance passes them by, so they're interested and they go to see what's what. The guy who's getting arrested and putting into the cop car is claiming, of course, that he didn't do it. As Sam and Dean kind of banter back and forth about potential options as to what could be causing this, they follow the blood smear from this house and find it goes into the sewers. Not exactly fun, but I guess they'll keep going. And near there, while exploring the sewers, they find a pile of skin and blood, which means they're dealing with a shapeshifter. Then, of course, the shapeshifter attacks and they get split up. When they reunite at the car, Sam is not so sure that this is actually his brother Dean. He is correct, of course, but can't bring himself to shoot his brother, and he gets knocked out and taken prisoner. While the shapeshifter is monologuing to Sam, who has regained consciousness, it becomes clear that not only can it take on the visage of its victims, it can also access their thoughts. And it starts trying to cause a rift between Sam and Dean by sharing Dean's innermost thoughts. Of course, it's a bad guy, it's a monster, so we have to wonder if what the creature is sharing is actually true. Sam certainly doesn't seem to be buying what the creature is selling, and eventually it wanders off to have plans to attack Becky. At her house, Becky invites who she thinks is Dean inside for a beer, and they seem to be having a great conversation, and Dean seems incredibly charming, unlike his previous attempts we have seen so far on the show, on camera at least. They talk for a bit, and then of course she gets attacked. Suddenly, during the attack, the SWAT unit arrives and the shapeshifter flees, injuring an officer in the process, but leaving Becky alive but bloody. My initial questions, there are so many, and I'll dive deeper in when we get into the later section of the show. In the sewer, Sam is trying to get free and realizes that Dean is also there and has just woken up. They manage to escape, and while wandering the streets looking for the creature, they come across a TV repair shop with TVs in the window and Dean's face in the form of a sketch being wanted by the police. Of course, this is not good news for them, but they're still on the hunt and have a creature to find. So they're trying to go and protect Becky, and they head to her house to get the car, but are unsuccessful. However, Sam distracts the police because he knows he's not the one wanted, and Dean flees. He returns to the sewer to try and find the creature, and instead is in for yet another surprise. Becky is actually there and has assumed her identity, while Sam is at Becky's house, and she is holding him captive. Sam, of course, fights back. Dean arrives and kills the creature that looks just like him. We end with the police deciding to release Zach because they think Dean Winchester, who they found dead at Becky's house, was the culprit in Emily's murder. There was enough reasonable doubt they decide not to go to trial, and Dean muses that he's missing his own funeral. When is he going to get the opportunity to do so? There is no local legend this week, as it is actively happening, and no one knows exactly what's going on except there's some sort of doppelganger. Also, for the first time so far in the show, we are ourselves this week. Dean and Sam actually play themselves, although Sam does say that his brother is a cop in another state, and Becky is sweet enough and I guess naive enough to actually believe it, and then gets super pissed when she realizes that every piece of activity that they have taken in pursuit of trying to figure out who really killed Emily has actually been compromising her brother's case. Other supernatural baddies. When they're not entirely sure who could be or what could be the creature that they're fighting, they come up with a whole lot of different creatures. Some of the creatures they list include shapeshifters, skinwalkers, werewolves, thought forms, and psychic projections. In the end, it turns out it's a shapeshifter, but not in the traditional sense, because in my mind, a shapeshifter keeps its shape and just changes it, but in this reality, they actually have to ditch the skin and bones. However, they can choose to reclaim a visage. So that is intriguing to hear as well. How to kill it? Apparently, a silver bullet straight through the heart is how to kill a shapeshifter. In the body count, we have Emily off screen before the episode begins, and the shapeshifter itself. Interestingly enough, none of the other victims actually die, but they do get beaten to a bloody pulp. So this episode is most definitely a break from the general monster of the week, and I think it is better for it. It is a really deep, complex, interesting story here, and starting to see a little bit more of what supernatural could become in the future. A couple of items. Number one, of course, is that this is clearly a friend of Sam's from Stanford, and yet he calls her little sister, even though they went to school together, and he was friends with her brother, but also seems to have been friends with her. So it is a bit strange that he treats her as quote-unquote little sister when she's maybe a year or two younger. It's not like he grew up with her being a little sister. So I find the nickname exchange a little bit weird at the beginning. The story, the pacing, everything else about this episode seems to be just more intriguing and more interesting, and definitely more of a fun watch than, for example, the previous, which was just full of tropes and not really full of anything necessarily original. Sam is clearly keeping in touch with his college friends while he's on this road trip with his brother, and we don't really know, though, what he's told his friends. All they know is that he's gone on a road trip, he's taken a break from school, but he is still keeping in touch with them and keeping in touch with his quote-unquote normal life. A couple of items here. They pretend that Dean is a police officer. However, she doesn't ask to see his shield of any kind. Also, I think most of us are aware that cops from other states don't have jurisdiction in our own. So no matter what they do, that would be a little bit strange to say, yes, of course, let's go to the crime scene. And of course, they are breaking into essentially a crime scene, but there is no police presence left behind. So I find that interesting as well. But even though they are actively committing a crime in an active crime scene, they choose to leave the door open, which shows a lack of awareness to me, and also just leading to being able to have the dog show up, I believe. But I think it is a huge, huge hole in this particular placing. Also, Becky mentions that she stole the security tape off of the lawyer's desk. I would think that because the lawyer is defending her brother and she's involved in the process, she could probably just ask to watch it. Or she could ask her brother to get permission to watch the video, and I don't think she would really need to steal it. Of course, this also leads to the conversation around her being incredibly pissed off with Sam, that he lied to her and told her that his brother was a cop and could help in the case, and actually compromised the case because her stealing evidence also breaks the chain of custody and, again, creates doubt for her brother's case. So a couple of different things about the legal system. Of course, many of us aren't here to watch the legal system breakdown for Supernatural, but it's just a couple of questions that really get brought to my mind while watching this and kind of interrupts the story. Also, point of contention, I'm not really sure anywhere in the world you can be except maybe China, where it is 5:30 in the morning and complete daylight, especially if it is the winter months, which is what's implied to us throughout different things that appear on screen. I don't know where in the world you would have full sunlight at 5:30 in the morning, and I don't necessarily want to live there either. Also, back to the law enforcement challenge, Sam does get arrested, but gets released quickly thereafter because he's not the culprit they're looking for. But my assumption is, from what we see on screen, the cops clearly see that Sam is with Dean, and it could be argued that he's aiding and abetting by getting arrested in his place. But they let him go. Maybe he makes bail some way, somehow. And he goes off, of course, to go and help his brother. Also, a really confusing piece for me, and the dialogue somewhat does not support this, is that clearly fake Dean gets caught trying to torture Becky. But then immediately we see that Becky is now the shapeshifter, and she does not look to have been tortured. She just says she was walking home and got knocked out. So who is in the chair that's getting tortured? Or how did she magically heal all of the wounds from getting tortured to only then once again get knocked out and tied up? And if she was the person who was tied up in the chair, I would think she'd be very wary of Dean as the person who's untying her and helping her, because he would have been the face of her torturer. So clearly she does not seem to have been the victim of torture, and yet there were two bodies in that room, Dean and Becky. One of them could be the shapeshifter, the other one has to be a real person, and it's not Dean that gets caught by the cops, because then we cut to him still being with Sam. So there's a little bit of confusion in this storytelling for me. Also, in a very interesting turn of events, Sam finds it very difficult to shoot his brother. However, Dean does not seem to falter when shooting himself in the face, which could go into a whole deep dive onto how Dean thinks of himself. Technology in the new age. Sam has a BlackBerry. In an age where pretty much the only people who had BlackBerries were strict professionals, including lawyers. So maybe he got one as an aspirational gift to himself, but once again, BlackBerries and super advanced pre-smartphone items were incredibly expensive at the time. And I'm very curious as to why he needs to get emails from his friends instead of texting back and forth. Especially since Wi-Fi was not a thing, so you needed to have data to use a BlackBerry at the time. While Wi-Fi was around, it was not easily accessible like it is now, so I would think texting would still be the cheaper and easier option than exchanging emails back and forth with his friends, but that's a point of a niggling point. Also, there seems to be a little bit of tension between Becky and Sam when they have a very long hug goodbye. And she says, hey, call me sometime. And he says, we'll see. So far, 6 episodes in, despite saying that they want to keep in touch and stay in touch with many of the people they've interacted with so far, we have not seen them do any sort of follow-up or even mention the names after they move on. Now, this is a great episode when we dive into Sam and Dean's family relationship. A couple of things. The shapeshifter claims that it can actually read its thoughts. And this is actually really clear because Sam immediately pings something as being potentially wrong with the Dean who approaches him after the chase. And he mentions something specific that happened with their father and hunting down a shapeshifter at the time. And he gives the wrong city. And it's clear by Dean's answer that the answer the shapeshifter gives is the correct answer, which shows there is some sort of mental link so that the shapeshifter can take on the characteristics of its victims. However, then, of course, once the shapeshifter has Sam tied up, after being confronted, it starts to try and drive a wedge between Sam and Dean. And we get to hear some of Dean's inner thoughts. Of course, we have to take this with a grain of salt because we have to wonder, okay, is this the real thoughts from Dean? Or is the shapeshifter strictly trying to cause issues between the brothers as a way of getting what it wants, as a way of continuing its little crime spree? It shares that Dean was really angry and upset when Sam went off to college and felt like not only was he being left behind, but that Sam got to go to college, which makes us wonder what Dean had been wanting to do with his life. It claims, of course, Sam hears this, but as far as we see by the end of this episode, he does not confront Dean about his inner thoughts that the shapeshifter shared, probably because he's wondering, were they real or was it strictly the bad guy trying to create tension so that it didn't get caught? Of course, even though the shapeshifter was trying to create tension between the brothers, Sam is very happy to jump in front of the police for his brother and to help him try and escape the cops as well. And in a completely unnecessary and very gruesome scene, we watch the shapeshifter shift from one form to another, becoming Dean again, strictly, I believe, for plot and story, so that Dean can be seen as dead, so he's not still wanted by the cops, and that Becky gets to reclaim her own life. Of course, this does answer another question I had, where in last week's episode, Dean flat out attacked and punched out a bunch of cops. They saw his face, they saw his car, and in no way, shape, or form is it implied that they're actually looking to find the person who assaulted two police officers. So in this episode, he is wanted for murder. However, they also find his body, even though it is the shapeshifter, therefore making sure that even though he's wanted for murder, he is not actively being searched for by the cops. A little bit deeper insight into Dean and who he is, we do have to ask the question, does he feel jealous of his brother? Was he upset at him leaving? And what was that piece about getting opportunities that he never had? Also, Dean's a bit of a nerd. He mentions a Vulcan mind meld, and he uses it appropriately. So this shows me that he's not just using it out of a whim. He clearly does know and watch Star Trek, which makes me very happy. And Dean considers weapons a perk of the job. He says hunting doesn't pay very well, but it does have perks. However, I must say that I'm assuming that they either buy or somehow acquire these guns to do their jobs, but I'm guessing he's saying that playing with the guns is a perk of the job, and he does enjoy it. It's trope-tastic. In a nice reverse, The creature does take over a known person in the narrative and immediately gets caught out. Sam is not buying what the creature is selling, and even though it has the right answers, he's pretty sure it is the creature. So unlike most horror films where we know as the audience that the creature has taken over somebody's form, and the main characters continue to interact with them, Sam is not convinced or fooled for more than a few seconds. Of course, we also have the storyline of a girl inviting somebody in and then getting attacked. But that is also turned on its head because this time, when the girl is inviting somebody in who we think is the bad guy, we're also really confused because we see the reverse in which the girl invites the guy in and she's the one who attacks. So that's a nice break in the narrative as well from most horror films where girls are only damsels in distress. Another piece to the Dean and Sam relationship, when Dean takes back the necklace from the shapeshifter's corpse, it makes me wonder, why wasn't it just cloned? Simply because the Dean is wearing the same clothes that Dean is wearing in the episode, but for some reason he didn't get to keep his jewelry. So why can a shapeshifter copy clothes but not jewelry? That's a great question, because Dean does make sure to take the necklace back. Overall, a really solid episode that continues to build the relationship that we see between the brothers and starts to build up a little bit more lore beyond general horror film ideas. It adds a little bit of its own flavor, such as skinwalkers and shapeshifters having to leave their skin behind, but still being able to take on another creature's characteristics. We have a good story. We have a little bit about checking in on just the general state of the world for Sam and Dean. Sam is clearly still connected to his old life. He's keeping in touch with them, and he wants to help them, but has not told his friends and asks Becky not to tell her friends about what he's really doing. So he's kind of got one foot in both worlds, and we're going to see how that continues to play out. Really great establishment as well as to Dean and what he was thinking about of the rift between him and Sam. But clearly they still are there to support each other, and both of them are there to do the hunt. Sam, even though just a few episodes ago when we first met them, was incredibly reluctant to get back into the hunting lifestyle, hears one little tidbit from a friend and believes it's a case and insists that they drive all the way there to figure it out. And because the show is filmed in Canada, we continue to see cities that look absolutely nothing like they really are. St. Louis is actually a 500,000 person metropolis with 1.5 million people in the greater area. But from what we see, it's a sleepy suburb, which doesn't have a lot of activity, which is completely untrue. So, questions to contemplate for the future. Was what the shapeshifter shared with Sam real or not? What is with Sam continuing to keep in touch with friends? And he clearly wants to go back, so does he have an idea in his head as to when he'll go back to his quote-unquote real life? Where are they headed next? We shall see. We'll connect again on the road again soon in the next episode, Hookman. Got comments and want to share your thoughts about the supernatural road so far? Feel free to send an email to get read out loud on a future episode in the show notes below. Also, want to help support the show or just enjoy it? Want to get some behind the scenes goodies? Go ahead and head on over to Patreon, also links in the show notes, to help support the Supernatural First Watch podcast. Be sure to subscribe on your podcast listening player of choice so you don't miss out on any future episodes of Supernatural First Watch podcast.